walk through kind of what I want to talk about today. So I know we do have some new faces, as well as some old faces who have kind of been along the whole journey that we've taken with this Kitty Hawk wind energy area. So I just want to briefly kind of walk through what those stages, that journey has been. Talk a little bit about the proposed sale notice and the request for interest that's out for comment. Then the next steps, so everyone kind of has a clear vision of where we're heading. And then most important, how to comment, how you can get your feedback in. So as a framework, we often talk about our authorization process for a commercial project in kind of 4 major stages. So, and right now we're currently in stage 2. This pretty much the publication of our proposed sale notice and request for interest was really the kickoff for that. So previously we were really locked up in what we call stage 1, which is planning and analysis. And I'll kind of walk through a short history of how that's occurred. So we established the North Carolina Intergovernmental Task Force in August of 2009. It's a very long time ago, if you can imagine. And essentially that task force is comprised of federal agencies, local governments, the governor's designated representatives, federally recognized tribes, etc. All kind of working together in order to inform our process in terms of what areas we really want to move forward with. So through that process, we put together a call for information that was published in 2012. It was a pretty large area. It started roughly 6 miles off of Kitty Hawk and then extended out to the current extent of the current Kitty Hawk wind energy area. That went out for a 60-day comment period. So closed. Within those comments, we got quite a few issues that came up that we really knew about going into that process. And that was that we knew there was a lot of vessel traffic happening within that area, and that there were a lot of concerns over visual impacts, particularly from the National Park Service. So it took us about, as you can see, about 2 years to work through that. And we announced what is the Kitty Hawk wind energy area in August of 2014. You can see that area in the back of the room on that map. So what that essentially established, it set up the area that we would do our environmental compliance work on. So we started our work for that, and we completed that in September of 2015. And really all that looked at, and this is important that we'll talk a little bit about later, is only really looking at survey activities. We're covered with that, and the actual lease issuance. That led us up today, once that was completed shortly thereafter, in August 2016, we issued a proposed sale notice and request for interest. And that went out on August 16th, which leads us then to where we basically are today, this presentation. So what's in the proposed sale notice? So if you go to the Federal Register, it's a pretty lengthy document, and it links to our website that links to about another 75 pages of documentation. So I've tried to break it down into kind of 6 smaller major themes. So the first one is kind of the area for leasing, which is the area that we're looking at, the description of it, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Again, I think it'll be important to really emphasize it talks about what the lease would actually authorize. Then you're going to hear more about the kind of critical next steps that's actually in the PSN that a bidder will have to take through this auction process. Wright's going to be talking about that in a few minutes. So the physical terms, so essentially, you know, what are the bidding requirements, what are the rental rates, what are the operating fees, those sorts of things is going to be covered by Bill Anderson. He'll talk about those in much more detail. The auction details, how is that actually going to run? What are the mechanics for that? And you're going to hear about that from Power Auctions. So, and then finally, again, really the key to this is we're trying to get feedback. And I'm going to touch on a few things that at least we're in particularly looking at that kind of get missed in that notice that we want to get feedback on. So first, the area. Just to kind of give you a set of where it is, this is the Kitty Hawk wind energy area, the proposed lease area. It's roughly 21.5 OCS blocks, or roughly 122,000 acres. For comparison, the Virginia lease area is a little bit smaller than that, about 19 OCS blocks. The water depths there average approximately from 27 meters to 41 meters. And it's about, from its closest point from North Carolina, is approximately 24 nautical miles. So, and it is strategically, this kind of curved line here is 33.7 miles from the Body Island Lighthouse. So, the activities that are authorized under the lease. Again, it's really, all the lease is actually giving a lessee to do is the ability to conduct surveys, mainly geophysical surveys, that would be done below the water, as well as surveys above the water for the resources there. So that could be avian resources, marine mammal surveys, etc. So kind of in a nutshell, in this case, so here's kind of a graphic of the different kind of geophysical surveys that could be undertaken. And yes, your lease does authorize that. In order for those, there is a prerequisite before you could actually do those. It's tied to the lease, which is a SAP survey plan. Would have to be actually submitted to us and reviewed before those could be conducted. This is kind of in this case, this is high definition video that was being done for avian resources. In this case, this graphic was used for one of our projects, or one of our efforts that we were doing off of Maryland and Delaware. And again, in that case, the lease does authorize that. And again, that would be part of a survey plan that would come in that we would look at. Kind of here on the right, it's kind of a mixture of things. So we have, this is actually a picture of Hino 1. So there's a wind facility in the background. This is offshore Germany. And this is a buoy that actually has a LiDAR unit. So in this case, you actually have a structure generating electricity. In this case, you have a structure that's actually measuring the wind resource out there. And here's another similar structure that's measuring the wind resource, but it's doing through remote sensing. In this case, the lease does not authorize those. You would have to actually submit a plan, which we would call either a site assessment plan for those site assessment activities, or a construction operations plan in order to get an authorization to conduct those. So these is an issue that we've seen through previous leases. That's kind of brought something to our attention as we've learned. So in our current leases, and which is in this proposed lease, in section 2.1 of addendum C, is it actually requires that before you go out and do any sort of survey work for a SAP, so those site assessment activities, i.e. met towers or buoys, you would have to submit a survey plan. If it was for a COP, there's a separate survey plan that you would submit that same thing for our review. So we've really embedded within this PSN, we're asking a couple questions. So one, fundamentally, is like, should we even have survey plans? We originally put them in there because we want to make sure that developers don't go out there, collect data, and ultimately find out that it doesn't meet our needs for our review purposes and have to go back out. So we're really looking at, is it useful to go through this process that can take a little bit of time and effort, there's meetings involved, that sorts of things, in order to get kind of the surety that the information the developer is going to collect is going to meet the needs we need for our review. The other one we've thought about now is we've had a lot of folks that have come in and they'll want to do survey work for that site assessment activity, i.e. that Met Tower. But at the same time, they'll want to start doing some reconnaissance level for an actual wind facility. In that case, we actually have the lease currently written has two different survey plans that would come in, one for a SAP and one for a COP, which are actually doing them all at the same time. So we thought about, would it be better to change these to by mobilization effort? So every time you go out to do a survey work, whether it's for your SAP activities or to do reconnaissance that's tied with it, you would submit a survey plan for those. You would still allow us to give you the kind of certainty you need that the information you're going to collect is going to meet our needs so that you don't actually have to go back out and do it again, which can be problematic, particularly with weather and that sorts of things. So we're looking for comments on that. The other one is the timing within our requirements for our survey plans. So we've tried to build into there certain time gaps to allow, for example, plan to come into us for us to have enough time to look at it. Then the lessee would meet with us. Hopefully that time requirement we put in there has given us sufficient time to really give you feedback without kind of forcing it to doing a rush job and not really being able to give you the information you really need. Similarly, we have similar requirements along those lines. So I would encourage everyone to really look at section 2.1 of addendum C and really kind of think about these three questions and kind of give us your feedback from terms of from your perspective, what would work best. Probably the main thing from all of our PSNs that we've published that's different is this one includes a request for interest. And that's never been done before. This is the first time we've done it. So it's outlined under our regulations at 30 CFR 585.12. And essentially what it says is that if we think that there may no longer be competitive interest in this area, we need to go back out and check. We may not have to move forward with the lease. We can go back out and check and see if there still is that interest. So why are we doing that? Well, you can see here, this is the Kitty Hawk Call area, the larger in green, or outlined in black. So this is kind of a density of nominations. We got 4 nominations in the green areas and 5 nominations in the kind of purplish blue area. So those came in roughly 4.5, 5 years ago. So, and also those same companies that have submitted those nominations, when we go back and look at their past history in terms of their participation in the lease sales we've had since then, it's been fairly low. So we think it's probably a good time to kind of do a check to make sure if there's still interest there. Because obviously if there isn't, we do not want to move forward with a competitive process. We'd rather either move forward with a non-competitive process if there's one person, or if no one's really interested, why would he be moving forward with a lease sale? So what that really spells out in there is it asks that all currently qualified folks that submitted nominations during that call need to inform BOEM in writing, let us know whether you're still interested in moving forward with a lease in that area. So if you do not respond, you consider basically your interest withdrawn. So it's very important. So again, how could that ultimately work out? The path forward for that I'll talk about in just a second in our next steps. So next steps, the comment period ends coming up here in about another 3-4 weeks. So that's October 17th. So when that comment period ends, we'll review all the comments that came in, and we'll also look at any new qualifications packages coming in. Because that PSN allows anyone who hasn't already expressed interest, the last opportunity for you to do that is at the end of the comment period. So when all that gets tied and done and we look at that information, really hits us kind of at this crossroads. So in the case that we actually have more than one person who's interested, who's now been qualified to participate in an auction, we'll go ahead and publish a final sale notice. That would happen in early 2017. It ultimately ends up that there's only one entity who's interested in moving forward. There's no real competition there. So we would move forward with a non-competitive process, which is a negotiated lease process. If we have no interest at all, no one's expressed interest to move forward, essentially leasing would stop. Should we do have interest, the immediate next steps for after that final sale notice is our target right now to hold a lease sale would probably occur in early 2017, probably in the springtime. So we are accepting comments. Again, that's to the 17th. Again, there's two points to that. There's the request for interest for companies who have already submitted nomination packages and been qualified and need to get back to us. Otherwise, basically their nomination will be considered null and void. And again, some of those few items that we talked about, particularly on the survey plans, we want to get your feedback on. There's also another notion within that talks about what sort of price index we'll use in terms of our operating fee that Bill will talk about during the presentation a little bit more. But we'll accept those either. We have comment cards. If you want to have immediate thoughts now and you want to write them on, you can get those from any of us. Hand them back to us. Regulations.gov, which is the typical kind of methodology for submitting government comments. Just go to regulations.gov. The docket ID is 20160045. And if you like snail mail, we'll take that as well. If those do come in, we'll have any of those. All those will be uploaded into regulations.gov when the comment period closes. So throughout, I just captured this in the beginning to make sure everyone get it. So basically, within our team here that's working on this proposed sale notice. So there's my contact information. Wright, who will be talking to you a little bit in the morning, or a little bit in just a few minutes about the timelines moving forward in terms of the actual auction, and Bill Anderson, who will be talking about this. And with that, we can take any questions.